Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a world where the nights are longer, colder, and definitely quieter than yours. You're huddled in a one-room cottage somewhere in medieval Europe. There's no electricity, no heated blankets, and definitely no Netflix. Your neighbors, a few grumpy chickens, maybe a goat, and at least 3 snoring family members within arm's reach. Outside, the wind howls through the cracks in the wooden shutters. The fire's low, your feet are freezing, and the winter, it's only just begun. You lie there, layered in whatever itchy wool or burlap your family has managed to stitch together. You're trying to sleep, but the wind keeps nudging the door, and the thatched roof groans like it's about to collapse. Spoiler it might. Here's the thing, surviving the cold medieval winter isn't about comfort. It's about not freezing, not starving, and not getting eaten by rats while you sleep. You probably won't survive this, but don't worry, you'll walk through it slowly. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you isn't the cold, it's the dark, real dark. Not your phone-dyed dark, but a pure, swallowing blackness that creeps in once the sun dips behind the hills. By this time of year, it's getting dark just after 4 in the afternoon. Candles are expensive, firewood is scarce, and no one's wasting either unless they're wealthy or foolish. So when the sun sets, you basically get up and crawl into something heavy. You don't have a real bed, not in the way we think of beds today, more like a communal pile of straw stuffed into sacks, laid out near the hearth where the fire used to be. And you're not alone. Your siblings are elbow to elbow with you. Your parents are on the other side, and someone forgot to put the chicken outside again. She's under the bed, probably warmer than you. The cottage isn't much, wattle and daubed walls, maybe a low ceiling with beams overhead. If you're lucky, you've got a small fire burning in the central hearth, and some smoke trickling up through a hole in the roof. There's no chimney, just hope that the smoke rises more than it sets. And your eyes, they're already stinging. The floor is packed dirt, the roof leaks. The blanket is probably just a coarse woolen sheet, maybe stuffed with more straw or even moss. If it's a good night, there's enough warmth trapped beneath your layered tunics to drift off before your toes go numb. If it's not a good night, well, you just lie there and wait for the cold to wear you down. Historians still argue whether most peasants had access to real blankets or just cloaks layered on top of each other. What's certain is that no one had enough. Nobles might have quilts sewn with fur linings. You have shared body heat and prayers. There's no such thing as privacy. You hear everything your father's muttering, your brother's snoring, your sister coughing, maybe the wind playing with the door latch, and that's when it gets really creepy. Because now and then, you hear something else, something outside. Maybe it's just a fox, or a wild dog, or the wind. But you clutch your blanket tighter anyway. People feared the night in the Middle Ages. It was a time when demons prowled, when spirits visited, when illness spread quietly. And if your mind starts to wander too much, you'll be wide awake all night thinking about witches, curses, or the time your neighbor dropped dead in his sleep after seeing a black bird. totally normal stuff. But let's get real. If you're lucky enough to eat, lucky enough to be warmish, then you're tired. You've been working since before dawn. Hauling firewood, tending sheep, mending fences, or threshing grain in a drafty barn. Your back aches. Your hands are cracked. You sleep because your body has nothing left to give. And this is where the weird part comes in. Medieval people didn't sleep like us. Not in one long stretch. They had what's called segmented sleep. You'd drift off in the early evening, then wake up a few hours later around midnight, wide awake, alert, and kind of okay with it. You lie in the dark, listening to your heartbeat, maybe whispering prayers or poking the fire back to life. Some people use this time to meditate, others to visit neighbors. Yes, at midnight, with a torch, in the snow, or you just think, reflect, maybe sneak a snack if you had anything left. Mainstream historians agree this first sleep and second sleep routine was the norm for centuries, but some fringe theories say it may have originated from ancient agricultural calendars or lunar cycles. One fun tidbit. Some people believed your soul wandered during that first sleep. If you were woken too early, your soul might not make it back in time. Great. By now, the fire's nothing but glowing red cinders. Your stomach growls. You remember there's still some dried beans in the corner, but you're too tired and too cold to go get them. Instead, you roll over and try to fall back into that second sleep. The one that lasts until the rooster screams or your mom smacks you awake for morning chores. And that, friend, is the lonely night. Cold bones, black skies, 2 rounds of sleep, and a world where comfort is measured not in softness, but in survival. You stir awake in the middle of the night, not because of a bad dream, though you've had those, but because this is just what happens. Remember that first sleep. It's over now. Your eyes blink open in the gloom, and for a moment you forget where you are. Then the cold hits your face, your nose stings, and you feel your sibling's foot lodged somewhere under your ribs. Midnight is not silent in your medieval world. There's a low, distant howl of wind, a thump against a wooden wall, and the quiet rustling of someone else waking up too. Maybe your father is poking at the embers in the hearth. You hear the metallic scrape of a poker and the dry crackle of firewood. If there's anything left to burn, it's going on now. This is the weird and wonderfully forgotten tradition of segmented sleep. You just completed your first sleep, and now you're up for what people then called the watching hour. You're not alone in this habit. Across medieval Europe, most people did this. Sleep came in 2 chunks, divided by an hour or 2 of groggy wakefulness. What do you do during this gap? If you were lucky, you might talk to someone, whisper a few sleepy thoughts, pray, or just lie there, letting your thoughts drift. Some people use this time to reflect on dreams. Many believed the first dreams of the night came from God, while the second ones came from the devil. So yes, you might be lying there trying to remember if the talking goat in your dream meant salvation or damnation. If you were wealthy, you might even read. Yes, there were people reading at 1 in castles by candlelight, draped in furs, sipping something warm. But now you're not sipping anything. The water pitcher is frozen. Historians still debate why segmented sleep faded. Some argue it was artificial lighting in the 17th and 18th centuries that compressed sleep into one long stretch. Others say industrialization forced people into rigid timetables. But for now, in your chilly little hut, you're living the old way. And it's kind of nice. Sort of. Of course, getting up at midnight isn't always optional. You might have to relieve yourself. There's no indoor plumbing, obviously. So you fumble for the chamber pot under the bed, an earthenware bowl that you pray no one knocked over in their sleep. If it's already full, well, let's not go there. Then again, some folks don't bother with chamber pots. They just step outside. Yes, into the freezing, snowy darkness. Watch your step. Don't let the door slam and wake the baby. It's in this midnight silence that medieval people sometimes talked about visiting neighbors. Sounds crazy, right? But there are records of people dropping by for a chat or sneaking off for, romantic reasons, under the cover of darkness, during the middle of the night wake window. Because why not? Some doctors of the time even thought this in-between period was the ideal time for conception. Seriously, there were manuals about it. Apparently your body was more relaxed and your mind more receptive. Fringe advice, but it's circulated. And if you're feeling spiritual, this is also the perfect hour for prayer. Many monasteries scheduled matins and early pre-dawn prayer during this very time. Monks would rise in the black of night, shuffle in silence to a cold chapel, and chant psalms until their voices echoed off stone walls. You don't live in a monastery, but maybe you whisper a quick prayer anyway. For warmth, for spring, for the neighbor who coughed a little too hard yesterday. The fire's getting low again. Someone tosses on another log, if they're lucky enough to have one. Most nights, it's just dry twigs or peat. That smell in the air. It's a little smoky, a little damp, and very, very weird. You roll over and adjust your cloak. Maybe you share a few sleepy words with your sister. Maybe you just breathe. The night presses in. The cold is constant, but for these few hours, you're awake in a half-world neither day nor night, neither asleep nor truly alert. And for medieval people, this was completely normal. Remember, they didn't think of sleep as one long block. They thought of it as waves, ebb and flow. The first sleep washed away the day's exhaustion. The second would restore the soul. That middle hour, it was liminal, sacred, and maybe even a little magical. You feel your eyelids getting heavy again. The fire's glow fades into the haze. A sibling coughs, shifts, settles. The room falls quiet once more. The second sleep is coming. The better sleep. And if you're lucky, the talking goat won't come back this time. You're half asleep when the cold nudges you again harder this time. It's not a gentle chill. It's the kind of cold that snakes up through your blanket, slips under your tunic, and settles in your bones like an unwelcome house guest. Your nose feels like it's about to chip off. Your breath fogs the air, and unfortunately, your bladder isn't interested in waiting for morning. You groan and push yourself up, careful not to wake the rest of the Hooper family tucked in beside you. The straw mattress rustles beneath you, loud in the stillness. You feel around in the dark and find the chamber pot, praying it's not already full, and hoping against all odds that it's still warm from whoever used it last. It isn't. This is winter in a medieval peasant cottage. No heating system, no bathroom, no insulation, and certainly no slippers. If you absolutely must go outside, you'll be stepping onto frozen earth with bare feet or worn leather shoes that crack in the cold. The chamber pot, unpleasant as it is a luxury compared to trudging through a foot of snow in the pitch black, while hoping you don't accidentally fall into the dung pile. Sometimes the pot is shared between multiple people, which means, well, let's just say accidents happen. Historians still argue whether peasants emptied them every morning or just waited until things got unbearable. Probably the latter, based on the smell alone. You settle back down, teeth chattering slightly. The fire's out. No surprise. There was only one log left, and it went on during the wake hour. Now the hearth is cold. A pile of ashy ghosts. You wish you had a dog, not for companionship, but for the sheer luxury of warmth. Dogs were the original heated blankets. Cats too, if they liked you. Still, medieval cold didn't just bite at you, it could kill. Entire families perished in winter nights when the fire went out or the roof collapsed under snow. Frostbite wasn't just for polar explorers. Lose enough heat and your fingers start going, your toes next. Then sleep turns into something deeper. To combat this, medieval people layered wool over linen, tunics over tunics, cloaks on top of that. Children wore adult clothes folded and pinned, and people didn't change clothes to go to sleep. They just kept them on, day and night. You might have worn the same woolen shirt for months, which is fine, because everyone smelled the same earthy, damp, and faintly of goats. And speaking of goats, you might be sleeping next to one. This wasn't weird. It was survival. Animals generate body heat, and when you're trying not to freeze, you take that warmth wherever you can get it. A small piglet snuggled at your feet could mean the difference between a miserable night and a slightly less miserable one. Livestock were valuable, and you protected them by keeping them close, sometimes in the same room, sometimes in the same bed. Of course, this made everything noisy. Chickens clucked in their sleep. Goats occasionally sneezed. And cows? Well, cows are not quiet sleepers, but at least they kept the temperature a few degrees higher. There are records of entire families sleeping on raised platforms above stables, using the rising heat from the animals below to stay alive. It's basically medieval underfloor heating if your floor is made of poop. One quirky little detail in some regions: people believed that livestock could speak on Christmas Eve. Just for a moment, at midnight. It was a superstition, of course, but it stuck around for centuries. So maybe, as you drift off again under a scratchy wool blanket, you give the goat a side-eye just in case. The room smells like wood smoke, damp wool, old hay, and something slightly more pungent. You know what it is, and it's better not to think about it. Everything is still. Your breath clouds the air again, briefly visible in the moonlight slipping through a crack in the shutter. It looks beautiful, like steam rising from your soul. If you were a poet, which you're not, because you're a peasant you might call it that, this kind of existence teaches you to endure, to adapt. You don't expect comfort. You expect to survive the night and be grateful in the morning. Still, you wonder how much longer the winter will last. The snow's been deep for weeks. The river's frozen. You haven't seen green in what feels like forever. And while the fire's gone out and your fingers are stiff, you're still here. You're still breathing. Even if your only real companion right now is a goat that may or may not be judging you, you wake again. Not from the cold this time, but because something just grunted in your ear. It's not your brother. It's not your mother. It's a pig. Welcome to the cozy world of medieval livestock sharing. You, the fire, and half a barn's worth of animals are all snuggled up together in one big human-beast sleepover. It's less a charming cottage and more a mild petting zoo with bad ventilation. The pig stinks. The chickens shift and rustle in the dark. One of them lets out a sleepy, judgmental clack. The goat, who you're now convinced is the real landlord, has positioned itself precisely where your feet used to be. You think about moving it. You don't. It has horns. See? In the winter months, survival trumps personal space. Your family doesn't keep the animals inside because you like their company. You do it because the animals produce heat, and heat is currency. A cow can warm a room by several degrees just by being there. Pigs, smaller but more wriggly, are like medieval space heaters with hooves. It's not just warmth they bring, either. Livestock are your livelihood. If something happens to the animals out in the cold, if wolves get them, or they freeze your sunk, that cow means milk. The chickens mean eggs. The goat means, well, goat. So you keep them close, under the same roof, on especially bitter nights, under the same blanket. Historians still argue how common it was to share actual bedding with livestock. But there's plenty of evidence that animals and people shared the same living space, sometimes even the same straw piles. In smaller homes, a single room did it all: cooking, eating, sleeping, storing grain, growing herbs, and sheltering beasts. It's like a medieval studio apartment with roommates that poop indoors. This reality reshapes your entire definition of bedroom. The smell is layered. There's dried manure in the corners, a damp moldiness in the air, and the constant undercurrent of livestock musk. You can't really describe it. It just is. You've grown used to it. Doesn't mean you like it. And then there's the noise. Animals don't stop being animals just because you're trying to sleep. The goat likes to nibble. The chickens like to murmur. The pig occasionally jots awake. Squeals once, then goes right back to snoring. You, however, are not so lucky. You try pulling the blanket tighter, but your sister has cocooned herself in half of it. Your foot searches for warm spots one lands on the goat. It does not move. It's like sleeping next to a hairy bag of hot bricks. Occasionally, a mouse scurries over your pillow. You try not to scream. It's a small mouse. Probably, and it didn't bite. Yet. One odd bit of trivia. In some regions, families believed that keeping animals indoors protected them spiritually during the long nights, that their breath drove away evil. Others thought certain beasts could absorb illness or misfortune, like a furry lightning rod. So if your chicken's acting weird tomorrow, well, maybe it took a curse for you. You try to focus on the heat instead of the chaos. After all, this is your only real chance to stay warm until morning. The hearth has long since gone cold. You feel the frost radiating from the walls. And outside, it's colder still. Your ears pick up a distant howl. A real one. Probably a wolf. They're hungry this time of year. And bolder. Which is why you're glad the animal is special. And not being dragged into the woods as midnight snacks. Still, the fear lingers. Not just of wolves, but of things less natural. People talk about spirits walking the woods during the dark nights. About witches who steal breath through open shutters. About demons that ride the backs of sleeping men. You might not believe it, but you also might. And so you turn to ritual. Maybe you whisper a line from a psalm, or you touch the small iron amulet tied around your wrist, a local charm your grandmother swore by. Iron repels the devil. Supposedly, the goat doesn't care. It's chewing on your blanket again. And even though this is all a little chaotic, this beast-filled, breath-steamed, cramp-inducing sleeping arrangement, it's not completely miserable. There's warmth here, a sense of shared survival. You're in this together. You, your family, your animals, all breathing the same heavy air, all dreaming the same frozen dreams. Eventually, despite the grunts, the shifting straw, the low animal murmurs, and the distinct realization that a chicken just laid an egg somewhere behind your head, you fall asleep again. Second sleep always comes slower, heavier, like a thick woolen fog draped across your mind. You pull it around you let go, and the goat finally stops chewing. You wake to the peculiar sensation of something crinkly beneath your shoulder. No, it's not parchment. It's hay. Again, always hay. Your mattress, if you dare call it that, is nothing more than a large cloth sack stuffed with straw, hay, or if you're lucky, reeds from the riverbank. It rustles with every breath. Poke it too hard and you risk a scratch, or worse, an insect encounter. And yet, this is luxury. Many peasants sleep directly on wooden planks or dirt floors. You've got hay. You've made it. Some nights, you swear the straw shifts underneath you. It's probably just settling. Probably. But occasionally, it crawls. That's the downside of a bed that's basically dried lunch for rodents. People didn't own mattresses in the modern sense. Beds varied wildly. If you were very poor, you'd nestle into a corner of the room with only your cloak beneath you. If you were slightly better off, you'd have a sack stuffed with natural materials, straw, wool clumps, moss, or even feathers, though that was rare and precious. These sacks were called pallets, and yes, they were shared. And yes, they always smelled vaguely like wet barn. In winter, you don't fluff your mattress. You flatten it by sheer desperation. You shift and compress until the straw forms the shape of your aching hip bone. Not comfortable, but at least familiar. You learn to avoid the lamps. You memorize the soft spots. You know exactly which corner is suspiciously damp. Historians still debate how often people changed the straw. Some say it was seasonal new stuffing in autumn, before the cold set in. Others believe it was whenever someone got less. So, fairly often, the old straw. It got burned, composted, or if truly desperate, reused in the prison, recycling, medieval style. And speaking of lice, you probably have them. Everyone does. They love hay. They love hair. And they love winter, because no one's bathing regularly. You scratch absent-mindedly at your scalp, knowing full well it won't help. It's just part of life. So is the faint smell of mildew that never quite leaves your bedding. You get used to that too. Quirkier still is the medieval love affair with sleeping herbs. If you were lucky enough to have access to certain plants, lavender, chamomile, rosemary, you might tuck sprigs of them into your bedding. Supposedly, they kept away pests, or spirits, or bad dreams. It didn't really matter. It was something. Tonight, though, there's no lavender, just straw, and a splinter pressing into your spine. You roll slightly. Now it's in your shoulder. Your blanket is a woven cloak, probably wool, maybe passed down from someone who died last winter. It's full of holes, smells like goat, and still has twigs embedded in the weave. You clutch it tighter around you. The cold has crept in again. You wonder briefly, groggily, what it would be like to sleep on a feather bed, like the nobility. Thick mattresses, linen sheets, heavy curtains to block drafts, and someone to stoke the fire while you dream. But that's not your life. Your curtain is a sackcloth nailed to the wall, and the only one stoking the fire is you, if you can find dry wood. You pull your cloak tighter and try to nestle into the good corner of the mattress, the one spot that doesn't poke. That straw's been in there for weeks. It's compressed into a flat, vaguely human-shaped dent. You think of it as yours, and yet, even this prickly, uneven, squeaky bed serves a purpose. It lifts you off the cold ground. It insulates somewhat. It gives you something to push your back against while the wind whistles through the cracks in the walls. One fringe theory suggests that medieval people sometimes slept upright during illness, propped against hay bales, or seated in wooden chairs because they feared lying flat would trap sickness in the chest. Imagine trying to nap in a chair with straw poking your armpits. Sweet dreams. You shift again. The pig sighs next to you. One of the chickens is gently clutching. The goat has finally stopped chewing the blanket and is now drooling on your ankle. You stare up at the rafters above. A single beam creaks with the weight of snow on the roof. You wonder not for the first time if tonight's the night it collapses. It's held up for 20 winters. But then again, so did old man Hrothgar, and he keeled over last Tuesday. Still, sleep is calling. You close your eyes. You breathe in wood smoke, livestock, damp straw, and let your body sink into the sack of scratchy relief beneath you. The hay crinkles. You drift into that strange and fuzzy space between sleep and waking, where your breath slows, your limbs grow heavy, and your thoughts start to unravel like yarn tugged by a cat. And that's when it happens. The dreams come. They're not like your usual modern dreams, with flying cars or lost phone chargers. No, your medieval dreams are a mix of firelight flickers, prayers you forgot to say, and that bread you really, really wish you had. There's always bread. Sometimes it's floating, sometimes it's talking. You dream of food more often than you'd like to admit. Warm pies, sweet fruits, roast meats you haven't seen in years. But you also dream of saints, demons, and family members who've passed. Dreams back now carry weight, sometimes divine, sometimes disturbing. You wake from them in the dark, blinking at the low wooden beams overhead, wondering whether what you saw was a warning, or just that stale turnip you had for dinner fermenting on your gut. Medieval people didn't treat dreams like random brain static. They believed dreams could mean something, sometimes everything. A talking animal that might be a message, a falling star, a divine omen. And if you dream of someone who died recently, better light a candle. They may be trying to reach you. Mainstream historians agree that in the Middle Ages, dreams were often viewed through religious lenses. The church categorized dreams as divine, demonic, or natural. Divine ones came from God, or the saints' visions full of instruction or revelation. Demonic ones were traps, sensual, terrifying, misleading. Natural ones, just your brain having a burp. But who could tell the difference in the middle of the night, while a chicken softly clucked near your ear? You've had one of those dreams. It starts with your grandmother's voice, soft and low, telling you to stay warm and not eat the green bread. Then suddenly, your cousin's goat is wearing a bishop's hat and reciting Latin. You wake up with a distinct taste of moldy rye in your mouth and a weird sense of clarity. That taste probably real. Here's the strange part. Some scholars think that certain medieval visions might have been caused by ergot moldy rye that acts like a hallucinogen. If your bread got wet, grew mold, and you ate it anyway, which, let's face it, you probably did, it could lead to vivid dreams, strange behavior, even full-blown episodes of delusion. It's not possession, it's poor food storage. You lie still, trying to piece the dream together. Was that a vision? A warning, or just spoiled dinner again? You whisper a short prayer, just in case, because if it was a message, you don't want to be the fool who ignores it. You promise St. Bridget you'll be more patient with your sister tomorrow. You won't, but it's the thought that counts. Back then, some people even kept dream books, collections of meanings and interpretations passed down through families or scribbled into margins of religious texts. A dream of fire meant purification, a dream of ice fear, a talking baby. Yeah, that's probably demonic. Better throw some holy water on it. Fringe traditions claimed certain herbs placed near the head could control your dreams. Mugwort was popular for this. If you had access, you'd tuck it under your pillow or hang it near your bed. Legend says it brings vivid visions and protection. You have no mugwort, just the sweet scent of goat breath and the dry crackle of straw. Outside, the wind groans against the walls. A loose shutter bangs once. Your sister stirs beside you. The goat grunts and shifts its weight onto your shin, naturally, despite the strangeness of it all. The chill, the dreams, the farmyard roommates, you're oddly at peace. In this world, dreams are part of life. Everyone has them. Everyone shares them the next morning. In a way, they're stories that give shape to long, dark nights. Dreams are entertainment, guidance, warnings, and sometimes just nonsense your stomach made up to pass the time. Historians still debate how much stock peasants put in dream interpretation. Was it a daily practice, or something they did only when the dreams were especially vivid? We may never know. What we do know is that in a world without clocks, streetlights, or anything resembling modern medicine, dreams were a precious glimpse into the unknown. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of hope. You roll over, pulling your itchy wool blanket tighter. The hay underneath rustles. The goat sighs again. You think you hear your name whispered in the wind, but that's probably just the pig. As you drift off once more, one last dream flickers across your mind. A steaming loaf of bread, warm in your hands, soft inside, crusty outside. No mold, no maggots, just bread. You wake up hungry. You open one eye to darkness and the faint, flickering glow of a dying ember. The fire is almost out. Again, the room is still too still. You know what that means. It's your turn to deal with the candle. You groan softly, trying not to disturb the bundle of snoring humans and livestock around you. You sit up, muscles stiff, knees protesting. Your hand finds the candle stub rough, short, and tacky with old wax. It's made from tallow, not wax. Tallow being a fancy word for animal fat. which is a slightly less fancy word for smells like a meat locker when it burns. The candle isn't elegant, it's lumpy, often misshapen, and usually handmade by someone with more hope than skill. You dig around for the flint and steel. Strike, miss, strike again. Sparks jump. The candle sputters to life with a hiss and the unmistakable scent of fried beef fat. Congratulations. You've successfully risked setting your house on fire so you can see 2 feet in front of you. Tallow candles were the go-to for most medieval people. Beeswax was a luxury used in churches or the homes of the wealthy. Your candle, by contrast, is a smoky little grease torch that drips like a slow-motion meat fountain. And yes, it attracts bugs, sometimes rats. On a good night, just the flies. Still, you need it. Maybe you're checking the fire. Maybe you're fumbling for that dried-out hunk of rye in the corner. Or maybe you're just scared of the dark. No shame in that. Most people are. And for good reason. Historians still argue whether the fear of night was more cultural or practical. But what's undeniable is that darkness had a kind of power back then. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. Accidents, spirits, intruders, wolves, anything could happen while you slept. And candles were your only defense. You hold yours steady and inch towards the hearth. The coals are nearly gone. Just a faint red pulse under the ash. You prod it with a stick. Maybe, just maybe, there's enough heat to catch a scrap of kindling. You blow gently, and it flares slightly. You add another twig. You wait. Come on. You whisper, just a little flame. There's a moment of hope, and then it fizzles. Back to bed it is. As you turn, your candlelight catches on the rafters. The shadows shift suddenly. Your breath hitches. For a heartbeat, the shape looks like a hunched figure, looming above you. You blink. It's just the cloak your mother hung to dry. Right. Sure. Definitely. People feared more than just physical dangers in the dark. They feared the unseen, the uncanny. Sleepwalking was often blamed on possession. Shadows were suspicious. Nightmares were believed to be caused by demons specifically. The Mara, or incubus, who sat on your chest and stole your breath. You probably just had indigestion. But try telling that to someone who swears they saw red eyes in the rafters. There's a reason stories were passed down about cursed candles that never went out, or fires that whispered names. When the only light source is a smoky stick of pig fat, your imagination gets very, very vivid. One fringe belief. Some thought that candles could reveal spirits. Light one during the witching hour, they said, and watch the flame flicker and wither with a ghost's breath, or worse, go out altogether when a demon entered the room, comforting. Right. You set the candle down beside your bed. The pig stirs. The goat huffs. A small child rolls over and kicks you squarely in the spine. You sigh and lie back down. As you stare up at the ceiling beams once again, the candle burns against the room. It creates shapes, long fingers, crooked shadows, flickers that almost look alive. You tell yourself it's just the flame, just light and movement, just your tired brain making patterns. Eventually, the candle gutters, the light dims, the shadows fade. And once again, you are plunged into the thick, velvety black of medieval night. You pull your cloak tighter and let the darkness close in. Like a blanket you didn't ask for, but can't escape. You don't notice it at first, because you're drifting somewhere between dream and shiver. But then you hear its soft footsteps, not someone inside the cottage. Outside, someone is walking the village paths in the dark. You lift your head slightly, heart thumping. The fire's cold again, the candle's out. Your eyes strain in the blackness. The footsteps crunch faintly on frost-hardened earth. A slow, steady rhythm, not rushing, just patrolling. It's the night watch in your small medieval village. There's no such thing as security cameras, police, or even locks on most doors. What you've got is one unlucky villager pulling night watch duty, making slow rounds to ensure no one is stealing chickens, burning down the hay barn, or sneaking around possessed by the devil. It's not a glamorous job. It's freezing, it's lonely, and it's terrifying. Night watchers walk with torches if they can afford it. Otherwise, it's moonlight and gut instinct. They carry bells, staffs, sometimes just a big stick. Their job, keep an eye on things, make noise if danger comes, and stay awake. Not easy in the dead of winter, when the cold creeps into your bones and the silence hums like a lullaby. You shift slightly on your hay, trying to listen. The steps pass by. A crunch, a pause, a soft clatter of a staff against stone. Then, a low muttered prayer. You recognize the voice old Eric. He's on rotation this week. Poor man. Historians still debate how organized these local watches really were. Some villages had rotating schedules. Others depended on volunteers, or whoever was slowest to avoid eye contact during the evening meal. Larger towns might have had hired watchmen, but here, it's just you and your neighbors, taking turns watching the night so others can sleep. The watch wasn't just about protecting property. People feared more than just theft. Fires were a constant threat. One ember left too close to a rush mat, and the whole village could be ash by dawn. So the night watcher listens, sniffing for smoke, scanning the sky for flickers of flame. There's also the matter of wolves. You hear them sometimes. In the distance, low howls rolling down from the hills. In hard winters, they come closer. Hunger makes them bold. You've never seen them, but you've seen the aftermath, blood in the snow, claw marks in the dirt, a neighbor's sheep with its throat torn out. So yeah, you're grateful for Eric and his walking stick, but being the night watch isn't all gloomy. Some villagers quietly enjoy the solitude. The stars are impossibly clear. The village, usually full of noise and chores, becomes a frozen sculpture of stillness, and there's something strange and sacred about being the only one awake while the world sleeps. You wonder what Eric sees tonight. Maybe just the quiet snowbanks, the shuttered windows, the glint of moonlight on thatched roofs. Maybe nothing at all, and yet some believed the night watcher had another role warding off spirits. There are old stories about watchers encountering strange figures on their rounds. Pale women with backwards feet, hooded men who vanish when spoken to, dogs with glowing eyes. Was it imagination, cold-induced delirium, or something else? One quirky tradition says night watchers carried iron nails in their pockets to ward off spirits. Others walked with a Bible tucked in their tunic or a carved wooden cross. Some even carried dried garlic or bundles of yarrow plants, thought to repel evil. Eric. He probably just has a flask and a deep sense of resignation. The footsteps fade now. He's moved down the lane toward the mill. You exhale. relaxing back into your hay. You're warm enough for now. The goat snuffles softly beside you, and you pull your blanket higher. The room's still dark, but the silence feels a little safer now. Someone's out there, someone's watching. That thought lingers as you drift back into sleep, not alone, but guarded. A village of sleeping souls, wrapped in wool and prayers, watched over by a tired man with cold toes and a big stick. You wake again, not from noise this time, but from the absence of it. That stillness, that thick, eerie quiet that makes you wonder if something's wrong. The kind of quiet that presses on your ears, that makes you check the slow rise and fall of your sister's breathing, that makes you realize you can see your breath, a soft puff of mist with every exhale, visible even in the dark. The fire's been dug for hours, and the last ember has long since given up. The room has frozen. You pull your blanket tighter, but it feels thin, like tissue. The air bites at your face. You turn, instinctively curling into a ball, trying to trap some of your own warmth, but there's not much left to trap. This is what winter feels like when the cold is in charge. Not just chilly, but deep, creeping cold that slips between fibers and clings to your ribs. The kind that makes your teeth ache. The kind that makes you afraid to stretch a toe out from under the blanket because you know it will go instantly numb. Medieval homes weren't built for comfort. They were built for survival, and sometimes not even that. Wattle and daub walls let in wind. Wooden shingles let in snow melt. Single-room cottages meant the hearth was your own real source of heat, and if that went out, so did your comfort. Mainstream historical records describe how entire families huddled together like a herd of sheep to survive the night. No privacy, no personal beds, just layers of humans stacked beside animals, wrapped in cloaks and hope. But even all that closeness isn't enough on the worst nights. You feel the air in your nostrils freeze slightly. You reach a hand out of the covers to pull your cloak tighter and instantly regret it. Your fingers scream at you. That's frostbite knocking. One quirky historical detail: some people kept stones in the fire during the evening, then wrapped them in cloth and brought them to bed as makeshift heaters. They didn't last long, but they might get you through the first sleep. Others used baked bricks, or even filled pots with hot coals. Dangerous, yes, but better than freezing to death. You have none of these luxuries tonight. Your breath curls into the air again. You listen. The cottage is quiet except for the slow creak of timber contracting in the cold. Somewhere, a small animal mouse or otherwise scratches in the thatch. You remember the story of old Martha, who didn't wake up one morning. They said it was the cold sleep. She went to bed with damp feet, and her fire went out, and by the time the rooster crowed, she was stiff as a board. You shake the thought away and try wiggling your toes. Good. They're still moving, sort of. Historians still argue whether cold was the #1 killer of peasants during winter, or if it was malnutrition. Truth is, they were probably inseparable. Hunger makes you cold. Cold makes you weak. Weakness opens the door to everything else. A bad cold becomes pneumonia. A scratch becomes infected. A chill becomes a coffin. Your mother told you once to sleep with your mouth covered. She said it traps the heat in. You try it now, pulling the blanket over your face until your breath fogs the inside fabric. It helps, a little, but you're also now deeply aware of how much it smells like feet, even in towns. Winter brought the same fears. Stone walls held more heat than timber, but they also held damp. Fires needed fuel, coal was expensive, and chimneys, when they existed, drew heat out as fast as they drew smoke up. Your little cottage might be crude, but at least the heat doesn't have far to go. One fringe belief from the time claimed that if you breathed too deeply on a cold night, you could freeze your ears. Untrue, of course, but terrifying enough to keep children under their blankets and everyone else thinking twice before gasping at the night air. You lie still, waiting, hoping, listening for the first hints of morning. Your sister stirs beside you. A quiet snore from your father. The pig has burrowed further under the straw, its round body emitting a faint, blessed warmth. You focus on that, not the aching cold in your fingers, not the way your nose feels like a tiny icicle, but the presence of life all around you. Your breath may be visible, but it's still breath. You're still here. That's something. Slowly, your muscles stop shaking, not because you're warm, but because exhaustion is winning. Your brain tells your body to surrender, just for a little while. Let's go. Sink back into sleep. The air is ice. Your bones ache, but you close your eyes and wait for the thaw. The rooster crows, sort of. It's more of a strangled yodel than a majestic announcement, but it does the job. Morning, you groan, not because you're fully awake, but because your back is sore, your fingers are stiff, and you already know what today's breakfast is going to be disappointing. You sit up slowly, brushing bits of straw off your face and hair. The air is just as cold as it was during the night. Maybe colder. The fire hasn't been relit. The pig has rolled itself into an impressive meatloaf at the center of the straw pile. Your sister is drooling on the edge of the blanket. And you're thinking about bread. Not fresh, fluffy, crusty on the outside, soft on the inside bread. No, that's a fantasy. You're thinking about the kind of bread you actually have dry, dark, slightly sour, and hard enough to be used as a weapon in an emergency. Welcome to the medieval peasant's winter feast. Food in the dead of winter is less about choice and more about survival. You eat what you've managed to store, and by now, that's not much. A few turnips, some shriveled onions, maybe a wheel of cheese if the rats didn't get to it first. Bread, however, is always the backbone of your diet's dense. Dark loaves made from rye or barley, baked weeks ago, now slowly fossilizing in the corner. Historians agree that bread made up the majority of a peasant's caloric intake. It wasn't delicious, it was fuel. But there were variations if you were lucky or clever. Bread could be boiled into pottage, soaked in weak ale, or scraped into crumbs and mixed with broth. Not that you have broth. Or ale. You have hard bread and wishful thinking. There's always that one child, usually your brother, who complains about the lack of meat every morning, as if a haunch of venison is going to spontaneously appear in the pot. You all ignore him. Meat in winter. That's laughable, unless someone butchered a pig during the fall slaughtering season and you managed to salt it properly. Meat is a distant memory. Chickens are too valuable for their eggs. Cows aren't eaten unless they die of natural causes, at which point it's a race against rot. Hunting. Technically possible, also technically illegal on the Lord's land. Poachers lose fingers, or heads. One quirky workaround, rat pies. Yes, really. In the poorest regions, rats, hedgehogs, and birds became protein sources. Some folks tried to pass off rat as rabbit and pies. You'd know the difference. Probably. You eye the bread in your hand, cracked, dry, and a little mouldy at the corner. You pick at the edge, sniff, shrug, and take a bite. It tastes like dust and regret, but it fills your stomach just enough to make standing up seem possible. There's cheese, too, maybe. It's hard as a rock and smells like it's developing new life forms. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants knew about food safety in the way we do. Probably not. If it wasn't actively crawling away, it was fair game. A family favorite is onion and bread soup, which sounds fancy but is really just a half onion boiled in dirty water with soggy bread added at the end. On feast days, you add salt. Today is not a feast day. You think briefly about the upper class, rich folks with roast goose, warm ale, and stuffed pies. They wake later than you. They eat better. They go to bed full and wake up warm. Meanwhile, you're trying to figure out how to make cold, hard bread go down without losing a tooth. You gnaw in silence. Someone burps. Someone else sneezes. Your mother yells something about saving the last turnip. It's chaos, but it's life. Once the feast is over, you clean up, by which we mean you kick the crumbs toward the wall and maybe brush off your lap. Plates are rare. Bowls are communal. Spoons are shared or carved from wood. Your napkin. That's your sleeve. The dog gets whatever's left and stares at you like you're holding out. One fringe practice, especially in colder regions, was to scrape up crumbs, sweep them into a corner, and save them for birds, not because people were charitable, but because feeding birds near your home was believed to bring luck, or maybe distract the spirits from bothering you. Hard to say which. You sigh and stand. The workday is calling, and hunger doesn't stop just because your food is boring. You pull on your cloak, stuff a crumb in your pocket for later, and step toward the door. The cold greets you like a slap, but you're firm. Sort of. And that's enough to keep moving. You step outside and immediately regret everything. The cold punches you square in the nose. Not a polite breeze, not a wintry nip. This is a full body slap from nature itself, sharp, bitter, and personal. Your fingers ache through the thin weave of your mittens. Your breath crystallizes in the air before vanishing, and your clothes. They are doing their best, but best is a generous word. Let's talk about what you're wearing: wool, more wool, and then some scratchy underlayers of linen that haven't been properly washed since midsummer. You're bundled like a medieval onion, one lumpy layer over another, held together by a belt, some pins, and sheer determination. Peasants didn't own closets. Clothes were precious and practical. You might have two tunics, one for everyday life, one slightly less filthy for feast days. No colors, unless you count various shades of brown and maybe grey if you squint. Your outer cloak, heavy, water resistant, and smells faintly of goat, because, spoiler alert, it might actually be made of goat. Wool was your main defense against the cold, thick, itchy, and slightly waterproof when tightly woven. Not glamorous, but effective. And that's itching constant. You're pretty sure a small insect colony lives somewhere in the folds of your right sleeve. You've named the queen. Historians agree that medieval clothing was designed more for durability than comfort. Linens against the skin, wool outside. If you were wealthy, You'd add fur fox, rabbit, ermine. If you were poor, you added more wool, and maybe a burlap sack cut into a fashionable poncho, haute couture. You trudge across the frozen ground, boots crunching the thin layer of frost. Boots is a kind word, more like leather wraps tied around your feet. They're stiff with old mud, thin at the toes, and about as warm as wet paper. Your socks, also wool, also holy, also wet. Probably one quirky practice you might have adopted, stuffing moss or straw inside your boots for extra insulation. It's not comfortable. It's not hygienic, but it does keep your toes from turning blue for now. Your head's covered. Of course, no one sane goes out bareheaded in winter. You wear a coif, a linen hood tied under the chin, or, if it's really cold, a thicker wool cap that hugs your skull and smells faintly of yesterday's soup. No one cares. Everyone stinks the same. Despite all the layers, you're still cold, not just on your skin but in your teeth, in your bones. It's a cold that hums in your joints and follows you like a second shadow. That cold, it's patient. It waits for a gap in your tunic, a sleeve that slips, a threadbare patch near your ribs. That's all it needs. One tiny breach, and the cold moves in squatter style and doesn't leave until May. You glance around. Everyone else looks like walking piles of cloth. Your neighbor's child is wearing 2 tunics and half a chicken feather in the hat for luck. Old Eric, fresh from his night watch, is bundled in so many layers he resembles a hay bale with legs. You wave. He grunts. You all look ridiculous, but no one laughs, because the cold doesn't care how you look. It only cares whether it can get inside. Historians still argue whether medieval people fully understood layering the way we do now. Some evidence shows clever use of undergarments, hoods, and leg wrappings. Others suggest trial and error strategies. Well, that worked for Cousin John until he froze his ears off. Speaking of which, your ears. You touch one and wince. Not now, not yet, but they're getting there. You pull your hood tighter, another fringe habit greasing your skin. Yes, really. Some people rub to animal fat on exposed areas, cheeks, fingers, even noses to trap heat and prevent frostbite. Effective, debatable. Smelly, absolutely. But if it works, you'd do it. Right now, you'd smear yourself in lard if it meant feeling your toes again. You get moving. That's the only thing that truly helps. Chores don't wait for frost to melt. The faster you work, the warmer you stay. You haul water, chop firewood, scatter seed for the half-starved chickens. Movement becomes your only luxury. The wind cuts across the field. You hunch deeper into your layers, grateful for every itchy, scratchy, musty inch of wool. You're not comfortable. You're not stylish. But you're covered. And that means, just maybe, you'll live to itch another day. You drag your feet through the frost-laced grass, squinting toward the church bell tower as the faint sound of a distant clank echoes across the village. One slow clank, then silence. That's your signal. It's mass time. Again. You groan inwardly, not because you're especially sinful, though last night's dream about bread theft might have qualified, but because it means sitting in the coldest building in town, pretending not to fall asleep. You wrap your cloak tighter and trudge along with the rest of the villagers. Some murmur morning prayers, others just mumble at their kids to keep moving. Everyone's layered like cabbage. bundled in cloaks and scarves, shuffling with the pace of people who haven't felt their feet since the fire went out last night. The church looms ahead, squat and grey. The stone glistens with frost. You swear it radiates cold like a personal vendetta. Inside, it's not warmer, it's worse. Stone floors, stone walls, stone everything. The only heat is from sheer body count, and even that isn't doing much today. You slip into your usual spot somewhere behind the miller's son, in front of the weaver's daughter, both of whom are already half asleep. You settle into the hard wooden pew, with a sigh that echoes slightly too loud. Mass begins. The priest's voice rises in Latin, echoing off stone. You understand maybe a third of it on a good day. The rest is rhythm, repetition, comforting, in a way, like a lullaby sung by someone who smells vaguely of wine and incense. Your eyes begin to droop. You're not the only one. Someone to your left is already nodding. A child is curled on the floor, sucking her thumb. The woman in front of you is swaying gently, her lips still moving in prayer, but clearly more than halfway to dreaming. It's not disrespectful, it's survival. You were up half the night twice, technically, and then out in the cold. Your stomach is mostly empty. Your feet are still cold, and the priest isn't exactly throwing in juggling acts to keep you engaged. Mainstream historians agree that Mass was a constant part of medieval life. Daily for monks, weekly for villagers. It was less about choice and more about obligation. Social, spiritual, and eternal. If you skipped, people noticed. If you slept through it, people understood. One quirky detail, some churches had wake sticks, long poles used by monks or church wardens to poke dozing attendees during service. You've never seen one used in your parish, but the rumor that one exists somewhere in the back closet keeps most of you semi-alert. You shift in your seat. The pew is hard. You're pretty sure you can feel every individual splinter. The priest drones on about St. Martin and the valley of enduring hardship. You try to look interested, but your mind is wandering. You think about food again, about warm soup, about spring, about the time your brother sneezed so loud during Mass that Sister Agatha dropped her candle and nearly burned the hymn book. Good times. There's incense today, faint, but present. Frankincense, maybe. A rare treat in winter, when everything smells like wet wool and goat. You breathe it in, and for a brief moment, the smell takes you somewhere else, somewhere warm. But then the cold seeps back, through the soles of your shoes, into your spine. Your fingers twitch, you yawn. Historians still debate how engaged peasants truly were during Mass. Was it a genuine spiritual anchor, or a rote performance endured out of necessity? Probably both. You come because it's tradition, because it's what everyone does, because you hope, maybe, that someone upstairs is listening and has a plan that involves fewer turnips. The priest finishes the homily. A hymn begins, faint and unsteady, but warm in its own way. People sing in whispers. You hum. The pig farmer behind you hums louder. His voice is terrible, but heartfelt. Mass ends. The final blessing rings out. You rise slowly, joints cracking, and shuffle back into the daylight. The sun has climbed slightly, just enough to turn the frost to slush. Your boots scratch. You feel a sneeze coming on, but try to suppress it. No need to start rumors. As you head home, you notice something despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the aching stiffness will come. Lighter, somehow, the rhythm of ritual, the quiet murmur of your neighbors, the brief warmth of shared song lingers, like a breath of spring in a frozen world. Or maybe you're just grateful you didn't fall over snoring. Again, the sun hangs low and watery in the pale sky as you trudge back from church, one foot squelching through a puddle of melted frost. It's not quite new, but you've already been awake on and off for hours. Your stomach grumbles, your fingers are raw, and your neighbor's cow is staring at you like it knows something you don't. But somewhere not too far from you, in a manor house perched on a hill, and absolutely not full of pigs and damp straw, a very different morning is just beginning. While you were wrestling with frozen boots and brittle bread, the local noble was still nestled in a bed thick with feathers and furs. He probably stretched luxuriously, reached for a silver goblet of warm wine, and grunted once before deciding it was almost time to wake up, maybe sleep. In medieval Europe, was determined as much by social class as by the seasons. You slept when you could. If you were a peasant, you rose before dawn. If you were wealthy, you slept in, often well into the day, because you could. Mainstream historians note that the wealthy had access to every possible luxury that might improve sleep: thick feather mattresses, velvet pillows, bed curtains to block drafts, and even bed warmers' metal pans filled with coal slid between the sheets. You have a goat. Servants would stoke fires before their masters' work. Nobles might lounge for an hour or more before even getting out of bed, often receiving visitors in bed as a sort of medieval power move. You try that. Your sister would smack you with a wooden spoon, and the difference didn't stop at bedtime. It ran all the way through the day. While you're laboring in the fields or patching up the roof, the Lord's schedule is flexible: a late meal, some falconry, maybe reading a new scroll, followed by a nap if the mood strikes. You haven't had a proper nap in weeks. One fringe theory claims some nobles viewed sleep as an aesthetic pursuit, something to be cultivated, perfected, even displayed. There are records of nobles commissioning elaborate bed frames carved with family crests, surrounded by hangings embroidered with scenes from scripture or heroic battles. You once stitched a patch onto your blanket shaped like a duck. It fell off. There's also the matter of sleep location. In noble houses, bedchambers were private, separate from communal spaces, sometimes even heated. Peasants, meanwhile, made do with what they had: a single room for cooking, sleeping, storing, and surviving. Privacy. That's a dream inside a dream. But ironically, all this comfort may have come at a cost. Nobles often suffered from what modern scholars might call excess leisure, too much rich food, too little physical exertion. Their sleep could be irregular, filled with complaints of indigestion, night terrors, and that old favorite, melancholia. You just get night goat. You pass by the manor house on your way to the woodpile. The windows glint in the pale light. You imagine warm fires, quiet music, fur blankets, servants lighting candles in brass sconces. Then you trip over a frozen rut and remember exactly where you are. Still, it's not all doom and gloom. There's something honest about the way you sleep. You don't toss and turn under 100 layers of embroidered guilt. You collapse, snore, and wake up sore but real. Your dreams don't come in silken sheets. They come with the cold, in the dark, through a haze of exhaustion and straw. Historians still argue whether the peasant class truly envied the rich or simply accepted the division as part of the divine order. Probably both. You're not above dreaming of fur slippers, but you'd still rather keep your soul intact. And your fingers, ideally. Your chores pile up, wood to chop, fences to mend, chickens to chase. You think, fleetingly, about a nap, but you know better. There's too much to do, and besides, you're not entirely sure where you'd put a nap in the middle of this chaos. Meanwhile, back up on the hill, the Lord is being handed a small dish of warmed plums and nodding approvingly from his pillow. You bend down to pick up your axe. Same morning, different world. The sun creeps higher, casting a dull pewter light over the village. You're out by the woodpile now, half swinging an axe with fingers that forgot what warm feels. Your breath hangs in the air like little clouds of resignation. The rhythm of chopping is almost meditative until your back twinges and your stomach grumbles again. Still, you're lucky you slept at all last night. Some nights, sleep doesn't come. Or if it does, it comes twisted. You lie awake under your blanket of straw and damp wool, eyes open in the dark, thoughts whirling like smoke around a guttered flame. You're not alone. Medieval insomnia was very real, though no one called it that. They had other names: restlessness, curses, spiritual unease. Sometimes it was just bad air. Sometimes it was a guilty conscience. Sometimes it was the creeping suspicion that something unnatural was watching you from the rafters. And when sleep won't come, you turn to your limited, sleek, wonderfully bizarre bag of tricks. You try ale, weak, flat, and warm from sitting too close to the fire. But it helps. A few mouthfuls dull the edges of the day, makes your limbs feel heavy, thoughts foggy. You're not drinking to celebrate, you're drinking to sleep. Mainstream records show that ale, beer, and wine were widely used as sedatives in the Middle Ages, not just for adults, but occasionally for children and the elderly. Some brews were fortified with herbs known to calm the mind. Poppy, valerian, even henbane, which, to be clear, can absolutely kill you if you get the dose wrong, sweet dreams. If ale doesn't work, maybe it's time for something holier. You reach under the straw mattress and pull out a tiny leather pouch. Inside a fragment of bone. You don't know what it's from. A saint. Allegedly. Maybe. You were told it once belonged to Saint Eustace, or possibly his cousin. Or maybe it's just an old chicken knuckle. But it helps. You believe it helps. And sometimes that's enough. In the dark of the night, when the wind howls and the frost coats the inside of the shutters, you hold that relic tight and murmur the only prayer you can remember. It's part Latin, part nonsense, part pleading, but it soothes you. Relics weren't just for churches. People kept all sorts of strange talismans to guard their sleep. Dried herbs sewn into pouches, wax charms shaped like stars or crosses, nails driven into door frames. Some even hung garlic by their beds, not for vampires, but to scare off nightmares. Imagine the smell. Now imagine it in a one-room cottage with 7 other people and a goat. You get used to it. Maybe. Historians still debate whether these practices were truly effective or just psychological salves. But when you've been staring at the ceiling beams for 2 hours straight, you're not in the mood to be skeptical. You'd pray to a soup spoon if it promised 5 uninterrupted hours. And of course, there's the priest. You've confessed your sleeplessness before. He told you to pray harder. You did. It helped for a while. Then the dreams came back, so you stopped telling him. Not because he was wrong, because you're not sure what's real anymore when your body feels like straw and your thoughts buzz like flies in a jar. One fringe belief held that sleeping with your feet pointing east toward Jerusalem would bring you peace. You tried it. You got a cramp. Another theory that demons ride your chest at night when your soul wanders too far. So now you try to sleep on your side. It doesn't help, but again, you believe it might. And that's something. Tonight, you'll try the air again. Maybe whisper another prayer. Maybe clutch that knuckle bone a little tighter. The trick isn't just getting to sleep. It's staying there, holding it, not letting the frost defeat it. Because out here, in the dead of winter, sleep isn't a luxury, it's a battlefield, and you're fighting for your life with goat hair in your mouth, and a possibly cursed bone under your pillow. You sit by the fire that evening, if you can call it that. It's more ember than flame, and the smoke's got a way of curling directly into your face no matter where you sit. Your cloak smells like a chimney. Your eyes sting, but you're not complaining, because today, the cough started, not yours, your younger brother's. Just a few little hacks this morning. By midday, he was wheezing. Now, he's shivering by the hearth, pale and clammy, and every time he breathes, you flinch a little, because you know what this could be. In the Middle Ages, winter didn't just bring frostbite and famine, it brought something worse: illness, fevers that raged and left people gasping, infections that spread through houses faster than fire, and the worst of them all, the plague. The word alone makes your skin crawl. You've heard the stories, everyone has. Towns empty overnight, carts piled high with corpses, bells tolling endlessly for the dead, and then silence. You glance over at your brother. Just a cough, just a fever, just a chill from last night's cold. Probably, hopefully. Mainstream historians confirm that winter illnesses, especially respiratory ones, were rampant. Not just the Black Death, but things like tuberculosis, pneumonia, and the ever-present ague, a catch-all term for just about anything that made you shake, sweat, or cry. And when everyone is packed into one damp, smoky room, sleeping in shared beds and breathing the same recycled air, it's a miracle any of you survive the season. The old remedies come out fast. Your mother wraps your brother in every spare coat and blanket. Someone brews a tea of boiled garlic and horseradish spicy enough to knock out your sense of taste, and probably a few memories. The village herbalist recommends a poultice made of crushed mustard seeds and sheep fat, rubbed on the chest while whispering psalm fragments. You do it. Of course you do it. Then come the dreams again. You wake with your heart racing. You think you saw something sitting on your chest. Something with long fingers and no eyes. Just a dream. You tell yourself, just a dream. But your brother's cough has worsened. And there's a patch of red on his cheek that wasn't there yesterday. Quirky medieval medicine is in full swing now. You try everything. Onion slices on his feet, burning dried sage to cleanse the air, hanging a clove of garlic above the doorway. Your neighbor swears by keeping a dead frog in a pouch around the neck to draw out the illness. You don't have a frog, but you do have a tone. Close enough? Historians still argue whether any of these remedies worked, or whether they just kept people occupied while nature made its decision. What's clear is that most peasants didn't have access to professional care. Doctors were rare, expensive, and mostly interested in treating nobles who could pay in gold, not chickens. And when things got really bad, when people started dying, you turned to the church. Tonight, as your brother's cough turns raspy, you sneak outside to the chapel. Your breath clouds the cold air. The snow crunches underfoot. You push open the heavy wooden door, step inside, and kneel before the altar. You don't know what to say. You're not even sure what you're asking for. Just, not this, not again. The candles flicker. The stone walls echo your quiet prayer. You light one of the wax stubs left behind by someone else, maybe another sibling, another home, and sit in silence. You remember last winter, when it was your cousin, and the winter before that, when it was the blacksmith's daughter, always in the cold, always in the dark. When you return home, your brother is asleep. His breathing is rough but steady. Your mother nods toward the fire. The toad pouch is tucked near his chest. And for tonight, that has to be enough. You lie down beside him, feeling the cold edge of fear settle into your bones, heavier than any woolen cloak, because out here, in the shadows of winter, even your dreams are holding their breath. The wind howls outside, slapping against the shutters with such force you half expect them to rattle loose and come sailing across the room. Snow has been falling steadily since dusk, piling up against the cottage walls, swallowing the path to the well, and turning every step outside into a risk you don't want to take. Which means one thing: you're stuck inside with your entire family, all of them, for days. There's your mother, already muttering to herself while trying to stretch the last of the turnip stew. Your father, grumpy and pacing because he can't fix the shed until the storm passes. Your sister, humming the same song over and over, and your brother still coughing, though the fever seems to have broken. Thank the saints. Also present a chicken that absolutely should not be in the house anymore, and your uncle, who arrived 2 days ago just to visit and hasn't left since. Welcome to the winter lockdown, medieval edition. In the warmer seasons, people spent most of their time outside. You work, eat, even socialize in open air. But in winter, space shrinks. The one-room cottage becomes a pressure cooker of noise, smells, and unspoken resentment. The goat seems to be the only one still enjoying itself. Mainstream historians agree most peasant homes consisted of a single multi-purpose room, with everything cooking, sleeping, living happening in that same cramped, smoky space. There was no quiet corner, no door to slam dramatically when you're annoyed, just walls, people, and weather. You pull your cloak tighter and squeeze into your spot by the wall, trying not to step on anyone's toes or feelings. Your uncle is snoring already, loudly, the kind of snore that sounds like a bear wrestling a bagpipe. Someone jabs him with his stick. He quiets. Briefly. There's not much to do on snowbound nights. You might mend clothing, carve something out of wood, or play a game with stones and bits of bone. If you're lucky, someone tells a story, usually a tale of saints or monsters, or both. Tonight, it's your mother, recounting the time lightning struck the chapel roof and knocked the priest clean into the font, twice. You chuckle. You've heard it a dozen times, but it still works. But as the night stretches on, the charm begins to fade. Tempers rise. The stew is too thin. The firewood is low. Your brother sneezes on the last clean blanket. The chicken poops on the floor. Again, you sigh and consider briefly walking out into the snow just for a moment of silence. But you don't, because the cold will kill you faster than your uncle's stories about his days as a traveling sack repairman. Still, there's a kind of rhythm to it, a strange closeness. You all shuffle around each other like slow-moving stars in a cluttered constellation. You bicker, you laugh, you fall silent. Someone cries, someone farts. It's all just this. One fringe belief, recorded in some parts of northern Europe, held that winter storms were the result of spirits fighting in the sky, and that staying indoors during the heaviest snow protected your soul from being blown loose. You're not sure you believe that, but you're also not opening the door to find out. The night drags on. The candles burn low. Someone breaks out the bone dice for a few sleepy rounds of a gambling game no one really understands anymore. You lose. You always lose. Eventually, the conversation fades into muttering, then to yawns, then to the quiet shuffle of people settling down for the night. You lie back onto your shared bed space, shoulder to shoulder with people who are both your greatest comfort and your most effective form of birth control. The goat nestles behind your knees. The chicken, having made peace with her own chaos, tucks herself in beside her brother. Outside, the storm howls like something ancient and angry. Snow creeps up over the windows. The shutters groan, but inside, for all the noise and bickering and sour smells, there is life, there is warmth, there is survival. You close your eyes, not because it's peaceful, because it's home. You don't wake up so much as get nudged out of sleep by something damp pressing against your cheek. It's the dog, or the pig. Honestly, at this point, you're not even sure anymore. You blink groggily, one eye crusted shut from last night's smoky air. Around you, the rest of the household is in a tangle of limbs, snoring, muttering, or sniffling. The fire's out, again, of course, and wedged in the warmest spot in the house, directly beside the last glowing coal and practically radiating smugness, is your dog, or more accurately, the dog. It's not exactly yours. No one technically owns it, but it's been here longer than your youngest sibling, and definitely pulls more weight. Animals in your home are not pests, they're survival specialists. They know exactly where to find the warmest corner, the softest straw, and the few remaining crumbs of that sad brick of bread you tried to call supper. And you know what? They've earned it. The dog lifts its head, looks at you, and then settles back down with the sigh of contentment that is frankly insulting. You are the one who brought in firewood yesterday. You are the one who spent 20 minutes drying your socks by the hearth, and now the dog is wearing them as a pillow. You reach out, it growls. You pull back. Fair enough. Mainstream historians agree that domesticated animals were often kept inside peasant homes not just for protection, but for warmth and company. Dogs, cats, even livestock often shared living space, especially in the coldest months. Modern people might find this strange. You find it strategic. Your cat, if she decides to show herself, has long since mastered the art of sleeping on shoulders, knees, and the tops of heads, She appears now and then, glides silently across the rafters, and disappears again, probably to judge you from above. And the goat? Oh, the goat has claimed a piece of straw bedding by the wall, and defends it like a noble's title. You once tried to reclaim the spot. Once, one quirky observation passed around your village. Animals know where God sleeps. It means they always find the warmest, safest place in the room. If a cat curls near the door, someone's going to die. If the pig won't lie near the hearth, a chimney collapse is imminent. If the dog refuses your lap, you've got bad energy, or maybe old cheese in your pocket. You watch the animals now with mild envy. They sleep deeply, completely, without worry. You, on the other hand, are counting the hours until morning chores with a pit forming in your stomach. You shift under the blanket. The goat grunts. The chicken flutters in her sleep. The dog-blessed beast scoops closer to the embers and sighs again. Historians still debate whether these co-sleeping arrangements had long-term health consequences. Some suggest disease spread faster. Others argue the shared warmth prevented hypothermia and kept infants alive. You lean toward the second theory, mostly because you're not currently frozen. The truth is, in a winter like this, warmth is worth more than dignity, or sleep, or personal space. You think briefly about nobles again tucked into canopied beds, with fur-lined mattresses and warming pans. Maybe a lapdog curled politely at the foot of the bed, trained not to snore or fart. You look at your dog. It's drooling, loudly, still. The animals are your companions. They get no special treatment, but neither do you. You all huddle here, in a tangle of steam and scratchy wool, making it through night after night. And deep down, you know if the fire ever goes out for good, it's the dog that can save you, not because it loves you, but because it knows where to sleep. You close your eyes again and shuffle closer to the dog. It growls half-heartedly, then lets you stay. That's the highest honor in this house. You wake with a start, your heart racing, sweat dampening your collar despite the cold. Something is wrong. The room is still dark. The fire is low, and everyone else is asleep, but your chest is tight. It feels like something heavy was sitting on you, pressing, watching, holding you down. You sit up slowly, eyes darting across the room. The dog's asleep. The goat's chewing on its sleep, which somehow sounds smooth. Your sister is curled on your blanket, breathing steadily. No one's awake but you, and yet that feeling lingers. You're not crazy. You know what this is. You've heard the story since you were small. A spirit, a demon, a weight that pins you down in the dark. They call it a night hag, a mara, a shadow that rides your chest and steals your breath while you sleep. In the modern world, they'd call it sleep paralysis. In your world, it's a full-blown supernatural crisis. Mainstream historians have uncovered written accounts of this phenomenon going back centuries across cultures and continents. But in your village, there's only one explanation: the thing that visits people when they've been cursed, or when the wind's coming from the wrong direction, or when someone forgot to leave an offering at the threshold. You shake your head, trying to shake off the dream or vision or whatever it was. Your arms are still tingling. Your heartbeat echoes in your ears. You tell yourself it's just exhaustion, or hunger, or that weird bit of mold on the cheese. But it felt real. the weight, the panic, the sense that something was just wrong. You lie back down, wrapping the blanket tight around your shoulders and pulling your feet in close. You whisper a prayer, half memory, half invention, and stare at the low ceiling beams. You don't blink for a long time. The thing is, everyone has a night terror story. The blacksmith swore a shadow man sat on his bed once. Your grandmother claimed a dark bird with no eyes perched on her chest. Even your father once admitted, quietly, that he couldn't move for nearly an hour after waking one winter night. Fringe beliefs offer all sorts of remedies. Sleep on your side, never your back. Leave a broom at the foot of your bed. Spirits hate haunting voices. Place iron scissors under the pillow. Draw a line of salt across the door. You've done all of them. Tonight, none of them worked. You think back to yesterday's chores. Did you step in something? Did you forget to cross yourself before entering the barn? Did the goat curse you? No, that's silly. Probably. You glance over to the hearth. The dog lifts its head slightly, as if it sensed something too, then drops back to sleep. Historians still debate whether night terrors in the Middle Ages were seen as medical problems or moral failures. Some scholars suggest they were linked to guilt, grief, or poor sleep posture. Others believe they were seen as omens. If something sat on you in the night, something worse might be coming. You lie there, eyes wide, waiting for your breath to slow. The house is quiet again. The wind outside has died down. Snowflakes drift softly past the window shutter cracks. Eventually, the panic fades. Eventually, your muscles relax. Eventually, your eyelids droop, and when sleep finally returns, it tiptoes in slowly, cautiously, like it's afraid of what might still be watching from the rafters. Morning never really arrives, it just seeps in, grey and slow, like thin gruel through a crack in the floor. You open your eyes to the same low ceiling, the same stale air, the same chicken clucking indignantly in the corner like she owns the place. But the feeling in your chest isn't the usual sleepy dread, it's something worse. You smell it first, the air's heavier, fouler, damp wool and old smoke. Yes, but something sharper now, like mildew soaked in sweat. Then you feel the silence, no fire crackling, no footsteps, no clanging of pots, just stillness and the cold. It's back with a vengeance. You rise slowly, joints creaking, and glance at the shutter. There's no light squeezing through the cracks, no pale yellow strip across the floorboards. You unlatch it and push. Nothing. It doesn't move. You press harder. A dull crunch sounds, followed by a soft cascade of white snow, packed tightly, high, higher than the window itself. You're snowed in, properly, completely. You need a shovel to leave the house snowed in. You exhale, your breath fogging in front of your face. Your sister stirs. Your mother mutters. Someone asks what time it is. You say nothing, because you know what this means. This could last for days. Mainstream historical records tell us that late winter storms, especially in northern Europe, often lasted for a week or more. Roofs collapsed, food ran out, people turned to desperate measures, boiling shoe leather, burning furniture, even melting snow indoors, just to drink something that didn't taste like goat spit. The worst part? This isn't even the beginning of winter. It's the tail end. The long, cruel stretch where you've already burned your best wood and eaten the last of the preserved meat, where everyone is tired of cold, tired of straw, tired of pretending the same turnip soup doesn't taste like wet socks. The villagers call it the hunger month. You remember last year, the snow came late, so did spring, and when the thaw finally arrived, it revealed things in the ditches, things no one wanted to talk about. You bite your lip and glance toward the pantry corner. It's not empty, but it's heading there. Your father is already outside barefoot, in a tunic, cursing the drift while hacking at it with a broken oar. You help him when he gets back inside, blue-lipped and coughing. You pretend he doesn't look as scared as you feel. You sit by the hearth, trying to push the last few coals into life, but they're tired, like everyone else. The wood pile's nearly gone. You've burned furniture legs, tool handles, even a ladder rung. The smoke now smells like failure and splinters. One fringe practice whispers through your mind. Hang spring herbs above the door to summon the sun. But you use the last of the dried rosemary to flavor the turnip soup. So much for magic. Your sister begins to cry, softly. She's not cold. She's just done. You hand her a strip of cloth to blow her nose, and she snuggles under the goat, who is now fully embracing its role as makeshift radiator. You're not sure who's warmer, the goat or your brother, who hasn't moved in an hour. You check that he's breathing. He is just sleeping deep. There's no difference between day and night now. The snow has smothered the light. You could sleep, but it wouldn't help. You've already done enough of that. Too much. You're bone-tired but mentally buzzing. Waiting, watching. You think of spring, stubbornly, of grass, of warmth, of walking outside barefoot, even if just for one day. Historians still debate whether this late winter stretch was the hardest on the body or the mind. Probably both. You've heard tales of people going snow-mad not from cold, but from the sheer sameness, the dull ache of nothing changing, of time freezing just as hard as the earth. The candle you lit 2 nights ago is almost gone. The flame flickers weakly as you stare at it, trying not to imagine how many more mornings will start like this, pressed in by snow, surrounded by stale breath, counting crumbs, and when the dog curls up beside you, finally offering you the warm spot, you don't move. You just close your eyes, not because you're warm, because you want to forget what cold feels like. You wake to a sound you haven't heard in weeks. Drip. At first, you think it's a dream, but then it comes again. Drip, drip, soft and steady, like someone gently tapping a spoon against a bowl. You blink. The roof beams glisten. A single drop of water lands square on your forehead. You don't even mind, because it means the thaw has begun. You sit up slowly, stiffly, and look toward the shutter. This time, light pushes through the cracks. Real light. Pale, yes, but different. There's warmth behind it. Possibility. Maybe even the sun. You shuffle to the door, past snoring bodies and the usual trail of straw, and push it open with your shoulder. The snow is still there, but something's changed. It's softer, sinking. A patch of brown peeks through near the corner. A bit of mud. It's the ugliest, most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Mud means spring, or at least it means not winter. Mainstream historians mark the medieval thaw as a moment of cautious optimism. Crops weren't in the ground yet, but minds began to turn toward planting. towards survival, shifting from don't die to start living again. You feel that shift in your bones. The village stirs slowly. Children emerge from houses like sleepy animals, squinting at the sky. Mothers shake out blankets. Fathers begin inspecting fences and sheds for damage. And you walk barefoot into the mud, just to feel something that isn't straw or frozen floor. It's squishy, it's cold, it's glorious. You glance around. The snow still clings to rooftops, but it's retreating. Puddles gather in the paths. The goat gives a joyous, defiant bleat and headbutts a snowbank into place. The chicken finds a worm and immediately begins a victory lap. And then, inevitably, the smell hits you, not the good kind. The melt reveals everything that was hidden under the snow. Old food, waste, mud mixed with animal droppings. It smells like a compost heap having an existential crisis. You gag a little, but you also smile. It's awful, but it's familiar. It's spring awful. You help your father dig out the well, now half flooded with slush. You reset a fence post that broke under the weight of the snow. You even check on the herb patch dead. Of course, but you swear you see a green shoot fighting its way through. One quirky medieval belief was that the first green sprout of spring was sacred, like the earth exhaling for the first time. Some people collected the first blade of grass and pinned it inside their cloak, believing it protected them from illness all season. You don't do that, but you do poke it, just to make sure it's real. Inside, the house smells a little less like people's stew, and a little more like damp moss. The fire crackles higher. The bread, still awful, is slightly less awful when eaten in sunlight. You sit on the doorstep and chew, watching the icicles melt, drip by drip. The rhythm of the thaw is slow, but it's steady. The ice on the pond has begun to fracture. The birds have returned, their songs tentative but unmistakable. And the children, those weird, rubbery creatures with endless energy, are already chasing each other through puddles, soaked and shrieking. Historians still debate what moment truly marked the end of winter in the medieval year. Some say the equinox, others say Easter. But for you, it's this bare toes in squelching mud, sunlight on your face, and the smell of earth waking up. Another medieval winter. Done. You didn't freeze. You didn't starve. You didn't smother under the weight of snow, or snore yourself into oblivion under a goat. You lived. And now, standing in a puddle, wiping soot from your cheeks, you feel a strange thing rising in your chest, a sort of cautious joy, a promise, and as the morning sun creeps higher, the snow melts faster, and the village clinks and clatters back to life. You whisper a thank you to whoever might be listening, then you sneeze, because, of course, the mud has awakened your allergies, but still you're here. And spring has come. The snow continues to melt, slow and silent, soaking into the earth like a long, tired breath, exhaled after months of holding it in. The village quiets once more, but this time, it's not from cold or fear, it's the hush of recovery. You lie back, now wrapped in warmth, not just from a cloak or fire, but from the season itself. The walls around you, though rough, feel softer somehow. The straw beneath your head is still scratchy, still smells like goat, but there's something comforting in its consistency. Outside, the drip of thawing icicles continues. A bird calls once, then again, its voice lilting over the rooftops like a lullaby. The air, though cool, has lost its bite. It smells like wet dirt, like moss, like something beginning. You feel the weight in your limbs soften, as if your muscles know that, for a moment, they're allowed to rest. You think of all the nights you made it through, all the strange dreams, the scratchy blankets, the breath that steamed in the dark. It's over now, or nearly so, and you did it. You shift under your blanket and sigh. The noise of the village fades as your eyelids grow heavy. Another winter survived, another spring waiting. Sleep comes easier, and for once, there's no weight on your chest, only the warmth of a goat, softly snoring by your feet.